as you can see, as you can probably assume, this is camp week. This week we don't have Mike Murphy is not speaking today. He's speaking at another church, and his best friend Jared from the nursery. Basically, you guys grew up since the nursery ages, right? Ankeny Church, First Church of Christ. I guess if Mike is David, then this is Jonathan here. Very strong, good friends in the Lord, and so much. Even Jared is volunteering a lot of his time because he believes so much in camp, and also his way is helping Mike out so he can share with more churches as Jared's going to speak today. But Jared, he's had a lot of experience in ministry. He shared a lot of his faith stories with us during Sunday school today of his journey of going from, of course, not just growing up in the church, but going to Lincoln Christian, and then being involved with a few different churches, and even taking a step of faith to help plant churches, which even though he wasn't even a desire on his heart, but God really led him to do that and kept bugging him, and he did it. And he's at a point now where he's able to help support camp, doing more of a helping more of a secular work. We're helping franchises, people who want to buy franchises, to do so. But with everything he has, he's using every time and his talents with preaching that God's given him to come here and also help fill other pulpits as he does. Even have many hours full time for his job. So please come forward. Give your hand for Jared. Yeah. Jared Nassiff. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. Yeah, as he said, that's what I'm here for, is to talk about camp and to represent the camp, which was such a crucial part of my entire upbringing. What's really fascinating, as Jason kind of alluded to, is this is the first year of us as a camp trying to do what we're doing, where right now Mike is at a different church. He's with a different congregation, being able to speak about all of the things that the Lord is doing out at CIBC and kind of the plans moving forward. Because last summer, we had, of the nearly 500 kids that came out, they were represented 100 different churches that sent kids to camp. That's incredible. Of that, the camp used to be made up. I was talking out here in the lobby about you could count on 15 churches to send some kids, right? And that's kind of what the camp used to be made of. But now, as the camp continues to grow in both churches sending kids, but also financial supporting churches, there's becoming less time to meet all the camps. In fact, Mike came to me, he goes, "Hey, I got a problem." Great problem. And he goes, "I got 16 churches I want to visit in 12 weeks. I said, "Oh, that math doesn't math very well. So how are you going to do that?" And so we started talking about a strategy of, well, how do we, what happens in 3 years, Mike, when you have 30 churches you need to get to? What about when you need to get to 50 churches in 12 weeks? How are you going to do that? So we started talking about ways to kind of multiply himself and create other ways for other individuals like myself to be able to go visit churches like you guys and to share and speak on behalf of all that the Lord is doing out at camp and kind of moving forward. And so which is incredibly exciting. So we'll dive. Let me dive right in. Out at as you walked in to the left, as you walk out, it'll be to your right. There's a table out there that will have all of this information and more. Okay, so at the table there will be some brochures you can grab and learn a bunch about the things that are out at camp and ways that you can be a part of it. There's also this year there is, as you see up there, this flyer that represents registration is open. It's been open now for a few weeks, which is incredible. We already have over 200 kids registered for camp this coming summer, which is very, very exciting. And then also, I'll get to that in a second. But so with this, if you can go to the next one, we kind of already talked about this. This is Mike in the front. He's leading the bobsled that we are in, and then I'm right behind him. Mike's been my best friend my entire life. Literally, we grew up in the nursery together. A big part of our friendship, too, has been going to camp and all that camp has meant to us. And then these are our wives behind us as well. You can go to the next one. This is my family. This is me and my wife, Rachel, and our 3 lovely, beautiful kids, Naomi, there in the middle. She's the tallest. She's our oldest. And then Wrigley with the little smirk on her face there at the bottom. And then our son, Ezra. And then we have our fourth on the way, which I've heard is exciting. We'll see. Go ahead and go to the next one. But registration is officially open. There's more, and I don't want you to just fall into the trap that everyone falls into of thinking, well, I don't have any kids. I don't know if my grandkids are going to go. Don't do that, okay? Because I want to talk to each one of you. The registration is not just for kids. Yes, that is our primary audience. But there are several ways and different ways that we want churches and individual adults to be a part of the experience of camp and all that the Lord is doing there. For example, go to the next one. We have a couple things coming up. That's not the one I was hoping was the next one. That's my bad. You're good. Yeah, this one, fall events. There's a couple things coming up this fall that registration is also open for. One, a men's retreat that we haven't done in years, but we're bringing it back in September. And there's a great way for you to be able to experience all that camp is and really to retreat from the world and go intentionally and be with the Father. And so go ahead and go back to that one with the dates on it, if you could. Yeah, thank you so much. September 12th through the 14th. There's also a Dad and I Wilderness Camp, which is actually an off-camp location. And so it's at a state park, and which is really cool. Just thinking about how the influence of the camp is continuing to grow. And then there's also a ladies' retreat coming up, which is also on my birthday. So if you want to celebrate my birthday by going to the ladies' retreat, please do that. A great opportunity to do so. Go ahead and go to the newsletter one, if you could. On the back table back there will be an example of the new newsletters that we just launched. So I want you to go ahead and grab one and see everything that's in it. But then also there's a barcode back there at the table, but it's also right here. So this is one of those moments where you are allowed to take your phone out and to open up your camera and to sign up for the newsletter so you can continue to receive and hear all the exciting news of what the Lord is doing out at CIBC this summer. So please go ahead and do that. Go ahead and go to the next one for me. We'll skip through some of these retreat ones. Yesterday, we just had the spring auction out at camp and had several people donate items to the camp that can then, we asked them to come back and then purchase it all so you can donate it to the church, but to the camp. And the camp raised over $7,000 for it, which is incredible. And there is a slide on there, too, about a bus. I don't know if that's the next one, but it's coming up that this past year we did, in December, we had another fundraiser that we needed to raise a certain amount of money. This one, thank you. Oh, with all the flares and everything, too. Look at that. I didn't even know that. That's cool. Good job, Mike. Anyway, and we needed to raise funds simply to make up a debt that took place this past year. Since Mike has been leading the camp, they have not had to dip into their line of credit with the bank for 3 years except for this past summer. Because the past 3 years, the camp has grown 10% year after year after year. In fact, this past summer, 52%, more than half of the campers that came were first-time campers. Incredible. Isn't that nuts? Insane. So because of that, there were several other expenses that came about. And then there were also some other emergency things that happened that they did have to dip into it. And so because of that, we started a fundraiser at the end of the year, and it raised over $21,000, a little more than we asked for. So praise the Lord, he just continues to provide and give in ways that are we didn't plan for. We didn't, but we needed him to show up, and he does that time and time again. So incredible stuff happening out at camp. Go ahead and go to the next one for me. So other ways to be involved, some things coming up. There are some work days that we need help with. So if you are an individual who knows how to do things with your hands, we're going to need your help, because if they're going to rely on me, nothing is going to get done, okay? But there are a few work days coming up. This coming weekend is another one. But there's also on the table a list of projects that need to take place in order for camp to even be able to happen. And that only takes place every year by the service of congregates like yourself stepping in and saying, I want to be a part of what God is doing in this way. So there's several things that we need help with. We've got 3 different Saturdays. Lunch will be included. One of those things that actually has just happened, one of the changes that just happened is this past year, we had some issues in the floor in the kitchen. There was a big crack through the center beam of the kitchen, which means that as kids would come in, eventually they will all just fall through the floor. We thought that was not a good thing. So what they said, they decided to renovate the entire kitchen floor, and this was another expense that came out of nowhere. And they just did the remodel, and they put it all down. Go ahead and skip to the next one if that's in there as well. Kind of show. There's the destruction of it, which is the fun day, right? And they kind of replacing it all and getting brand new flooring put in there as well, which is exciting stuff. And so there we go. That's not fully done, but you get the idea. And so you have to come out this summer and see the new kitchen floor that's been put into the kitchen as well. And then I think I got one or two more. Yes, we'll mention this one, and then we'll kind of dive into what we're studying today. One of the programs that we started a few years back is Work a Week, Earn a Week, where a camper can come out to camp and serve as support, especially in like grounds and kitchen and some other ways that they can work a week of camp and then earn a free registration for a week. And there's actually only we had 25 open spots. We only have 2 spots left, and they're for high school camp only. Okay, so if there's an individual at junior high or college that are looking to earn a free week of camp, we have 2 spots open to work at high school week of camp this coming summer. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. Go ahead and there's the pool ones on there. Let's skip to the pool ones. The pool is completely open. This summer was incredible. And, as we've had all these first-timers go, usually we just kind of would have had to bus kids either to the lake or to Earlham, to the pool in the past. Now we have a pool that has been used in so many different ways. And one of the most exciting things beyond just the fun and the cooling off is the fact that we've been able to use it for baptisms. Last summer, we had 22 decisions made for Christ, and which is incredible. That pool is yeah, exactly. Thank you. Praise the Lord, huh? That pool is being able to be used in that way. Exciting. And like the thing that's cool about that is that those kids and those adults that gave their life to Christ last year and were baptized in that pool, that location is going to be significant for them for their entire life. They're going to remember that place, that moment in time. It is transformative for them for eternity. Incredible to think about. So one of the things I wanted to ask you as we kind of dive in is, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask people as I'm getting to know them, and since you and I are getting to know each other, I thought it might be appropriate to go here, is where is a place of warmth for you from your childhood? When you think about growing up, where were some places of warmth for you? What I mean is, for example, a couple come to mind for me. One would be my grandparents' house in Sioux City, Iowa. I just have such fond memories of going there every holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and a couple times throughout the year we'd be able to go to. I looked forward to that trip every single time, because there was something warm and safe and just loving about Grandma and Grandpa's house. From being able to play upstairs with my cousins with all the action figures and whatever, to the eggs and bacon that my grandma made every morning, to watching sports with my grandfather as he would fall asleep, and just like so many fond memories, playing football in the yard, like so many fond memories, year after year after year after year. Another one for me comes to mind is my own family dinner table growing up. Especially in junior high and high school, as our schedules, there was 4 of us, as our schedules were crazy, whether it was sports or clubs or music or job or youth group, like most evenings, we were somewhere. But it always seemed like there was intentionality about making sure we're all at the table together. And my dad would lead us through family devotionals, and just some crucial, critical conversations would take place at that family table. My mom would fill us up with all of her cheesy everything and whatever, but it's just so many fond memories. So it's a couple places of warmth for me in my childhood. And what I want you to do is, as you're reflecting right now, I want you to take a minute and turn to the people next to you, if you could, and share a place of warmth for you in your childhood. I'm going to pause. You go ahead and turn to people next to you. And even if you're online right now or watching later too, put it in the comments. Write something about places of warmth for you in your childhood. Go ahead. Some of these places, it's kind of cool as you reflect upon it. Maybe you didn't recognize it before, but now that you think through it too, we realize how formative and foundational some of these places and locations were in our own story, right? That they were transformative for us. Camp is one of those places for me. Has anyone ever been to CIBC? Awesome. Anyone ever been to any other kind of church camp or Bible camp in general? Awesome. Anybody been out of the house? Yeah, great, good. Camp for me is one of those transformative places. As I think through my own upbringing, my own childhood, you don't know it at the time, but as you look back and reflect upon it, you realize how foundational that was to your own story. And I can even still remember, like, you have moments of nostalgia that take you back to those places in your childhood. Like, I know even when I go out to hang out with the Murphys and see Mike or go to visit camp or I'm there in the summer, every time I get off that Earlham exit and I turn right and I hit the gravel road, something about my childhood comes flooding back, is that excitement as a kid, just driving in the minivan with my 3 or 4 friends, Mike being one of them, getting out to camp, getting so excited for camp that summer, and just longing to be there again, seeing my friends I haven't seen in a year, or the ones that I used to handwrite letters to in the mail, which was crazy, but just so excited for all the moments that would take place. And even as I walk around camp, man, I'm taken back to those moments of the higher moments of standing around the campfire and singing songs of worship. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. And then the terrible echoes in the background is like great stuff, right? And the moments around it, like even in your own cabin, being scared to death by a ghost story by your leader, and just great, right? And or the games you get into play with faculty hunts and playing kickball, and just so many fond memories that, or being in the cafeteria and being poked by someone's fork because they sing a song and they poke you. It's a camp thing if you're unfamiliar with that, but or at least used to be. But so many fond memories. Camp was one of those places for me, and it is for so many other kids, and hopefully maybe is for some of you. Today I want to look at a story of one of the most, of a place, of a location that became one of the most transformative and foundational locations for the characters involved in the story. So if you have a Bible, turn to Luke chapter 9. And we're going to look at what we kind of call, and it's in subtitle, is the Transfiguration story. It's in Luke chapter 9. And what happened here at this location is we're going to talk through this because it is potentially the most critical location for 3 of the characters that are going to show up in this story. Luke chapter 9, verse 28, it says, About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountaintop to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. And they spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, This is my son, whom I love, whom I have chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. Clearly, Luke's writing about this, so eventually they told some people what happened, right? But I think what's interesting about, there's several things interesting, but I think the story can be easily overlooked. And I think it is often, at least the weight of the story can be overlooked because for a few things. One, the brevity of it. It's a fairly short story. It's not super long, and it's in the middle of a chapter for us, right? And other elements of it, too, are kind of confusing. It seemed like some people showed up, they started talking about something, they left, Jesus was alone, there was a cloud, there was a voice. What is really going on here? And however, as I said before, this story is one of the most significant stories in all 4 of the Gospels. In fact, this story serves, I don't know if you've known this before or not, this story serves as the turning point in the Gospel of Luke. Okay, so the first half of Luke, it kind of leads up to this, is almost a climax of sorts. And so, like, as they're kind of coming up the mountain, the story kind of goes with it. And then it kind of comes back down as it leads to, the rest of the story kind of begins to lead to the end of Jesus' earthly life and what happens next. Okay? It's critical. In fact, even in verse 51 of that chapter, if you were to look at chapter 9, verse 51, it says, as the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, okay, which you know when that happens in his story, Jesus resolutely set out, or in Greek, turned face for Jerusalem. And that's where the cross event would take place. So this is a turning point here in this story. But here's what's interesting. Even though this is an important story for us, there's a lot of it that's easily missed. And I think part of that, why maybe we've misunderstood some of the story, we miss out on some of the elements or symbolism in the story, is because we don't know our Old Testament quite as well. Because there's so much richness happening that Luke is drawing us back to. For example, in the first couple words, it said about 8 days. Did you know the other gospel writers, they mentioned 6 days? Now, Luke is a doctor. He's a detail-oriented guy. He's probably not going to make up 8 just for the sake of it, or he was in an argument with, I mean, maybe he was, but he's probably doing something else with that. Maybe he's relating it back to either, it's since Jesus is of Jewish nature, and he's talking to a Hebrew audience, a Jewish audience. Maybe he's mentioning the 8 days from birth to circumcision that's taking place. Or maybe he's mentioning the stories, drawing the reader back to the story of the ark, and how 8 individuals were saved by what God was doing. Another element that was easily missed is the fact of where this takes place. And this is the location that becomes so transformative for Peter, James, and John. Is that where are we in the story? We are on top of a mountain, right? Everyone say mountain. The mountain in the Old Testament, in the history of Israel, is such a foundational location. And not just any one specific mountain, but all throughout the Old Testament. The mountain was representative and was the location where God would encounter man. Literally, it is where heaven and earth would collide. I think of the very first one is Eden. And there's 12 or 13 different Old Testament references where Eden was on a mountaintop. So you have this mountain of Eden, so to speak, where God was walking with man. You have Mount Moriah, where you have Abraham is called to go up to the mountain with his son to sacrifice his son Isaac, and there encounters God. You have Mount Sinai, where Moses journeys up to go be with God and receives the law that would be kind of the formation of the relationship between God and man, right? The mountaintop, and there's time and time and time again all throughout Scripture where the mountain becomes the place where heaven and earth collide. And surely this is something Luke is trying to draw the reader back to. This is what he's trying to echo back to. In fact, much of this transfiguration story draws us back to Israel's story throughout the entire book of Exodus, which is why a lot of this might be lost on us. Is maybe we need to spend some time just walking through Exodus and then come back to the transfiguration story. So open up to Exodus chapter 1. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to read through the whole book of Exodus, but might be a good practice to do so. Remember, because for example, remember what happens next on this mountain. They get up there. What happens? Moses and Elijah both show up. Incredible. And we talked about this in Sunday school. That this is the moment Moses finally enters the promised land. Interesting that this happens this way, right? But Moses and Elijah both show up here. Now, each one is supposed to represent an element of what we see in the Hebrew Scriptures, specifically the law and the prophets. Moses, respectively, represents the law. Elijah representing the prophets. Okay? Fascinating what's happening here. In other words, they're all summed up in these two men. The entire Old Testament is summed up here in these two individuals. And Jesus is just chatting it up with them. Man, I would have loved to hear what that conversation was like. Now, we know the subject of what they're talking about. Just to hear them talk would have been Peter, James, and John. I don't know what. I'm sure they were blown away. If Jesus was just like, how's the weather in heaven, guys? Like, Well, it's always sunny, Jesus. Like what that conversation would have been like. Now, we know part of it, but it says in verse 31 that Moses and Elijah were talking to Jesus about his departure. Everyone say departure. Interesting word choice here. Or at least how the NIV and the NRSV translate it, we use departure. The Greek word is exodos. Everyone say exodos. Yeah. Another word that comes from that word is exodus. The word is literally exodus. And there's a couple different set of associations that come with that word. One being just simply departure, which is why we translate it that way. As in, you're leaving a place. So it's talking about him getting ready to leave earth. So they could very well have been talking about his ascension. But another set of associations that come with this word, often found throughout Jewish literature, is death. So probably they're talking about both the cross and what is about to happen to prepare him for it, and then also his ascension to come later. Now the point is this, that the point is for us to recognize that Jesus here in this very moment, this very critical, significant moment, is not symbolically replacing the law and the prophets. He is not replacing the Old Testament when Moses and Elijah disappear and all they see is Jesus remaining. That's not what's happening. But instead, Jesus here is meant to fulfill what those were pointing toward. The purpose of the law, the purpose of the prophets, all pointing toward Jesus. That's the point. Everything that the Hebrew Scriptures are about, the entire story of Israel, is all pointing toward the Son of Man, Jesus the Christ. And then after this, it says, unsurprisingly, that in this very critical, significant, important moment in history, that Peter and the other two were a bit sleepy. Which is funny to me. I mean, I get it. They climbed a mountain, probably tired. But it seems to be like, if you ever study the story of Peter, it's pretty funny to see, this seems to kind of go with Peter's MO. He's just kind of there's always something that he kind of either messed up or, doesn't show up in the greatest light. But this seems to be the case. And so then Peter makes the classic Peter move, and he makes a suggestion that shows he doesn't know what he's doing. And he makes a suggestion to build shelters for each of them. One for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Now, there's a couple major theories as to why he would suggest this. The two major theories are this. One is that Peter is offering to create some kind of, like a kind of memorial for this event. That he's recognizing in the moment, this is a massive historical encounter. This is going to be remembered forever. We need to memorialize this event, this happening right here. This is where the three of them stood. That could be very well what he's doing, right? You think back to Jacob's well. You think back to the stacking of the stones in Joshua, that this was part of the Hebrew people's story, that they would create memorials of specific locations, places of warmth that become so foundational in Israel's own story. Another major theory is that Peter just wants to stay there as long as possible, right? And who can blame him? Every summer without fail, nearly every single student that spends a week at camp, although they might be hesitant on the first day, by the end of it, they want to stay there as long as they possibly can. And thank the Lord that parents come and pick them up. You know? But this is what mountaintop experiences do to us. They create such a formative moment for us that oftentimes we just want to sit and rest and be there in that moment, in that place and time, for as long as we possibly can. And that's what Peter was maybe trying to do. The truth is, we don't really know either way what Peter was ultimately trying to do here. In fact, Luke even points that out to us. In one of the sassiest verses in the entire Bible, Luke writes, and we put in parentheses, he did not know what he was saying. Good old Peter. Right? And then after that, we're drawn back into the Exodus story once again in verse 34 when it says, a cloud appeared and covered them. Now, for a Jewish reader, their minds most likely would have been drawn right back to the story of Exodus, where the cloud would go before God's people, which would represent and would be the presence of the Almighty going before them. This is what they're being drawn back to. Now, what? If you take all these pieces together of what's happening in this story, piece it together, realize, think through that. What an incredible moment that Peter, James, and John got to experience, right? I mean, what an incredible moment that happened on this mountaintop. But here, what is most striking to me is that, did you notice, this mountain is never given a name. Luke, who's a doctor, who's detail-oriented, he never names what mountain they're on. Doesn't that seem like it would be an important or critical detail to include when you're trying to recall the truth of an event? To leave that out just seems like, why would you not mention that? Did you forget? I think it happened somewhere over there. That's not what's happening with this kind of an event, right? It seems critical in the history of Israel's story. But here's what I think is happening here. Perhaps it was intentional to leave it out, because perhaps the mountain isn't named. The reason it's not named is that it can therefore remain a metaphor, or more symbolic. Perhaps it's designed, and this is challenging, track with me here. Perhaps it is designed to invite the reader, us, to reflect on what the mountain has represented throughout all of history for Israel. And maybe the point is that now at this very point in time, as soon as they leave this mountain, maybe the point is this: that the mountain doesn't matter anymore. That no longer do God's people need to journey up a mountain to be with and experience God himself. Maybe the point of this story, this transfiguration story, and why the mountain is not named, is that it can be symbolic. So therefore, the mountain location no longer is going to be the only place where heaven and earth collide. Because I think what's most foundational here is that they see Jesus alone. And that when they come down the mountain with Jesus, they can leave the mountains behind forever. Because now they are with the one who has become the place where God can encounter man. He is the place where heaven and earth collide. That is the power of this transfiguration story. The power isn't what mountain they're on. The power is that these three individuals are learning that Jesus, in a symbolic way, is the mountain. And he will always be for his people. Jesus is where heaven and earth collide. I don't think Peter, James, and John fully understood that at this point. Maybe with you, with your places of warmth, as you look back, at that time, you probably didn't realize how transformative those locations would be for you until you think back. And hindsight is a beautiful thing. But the amazing thing about this story is that although this was probably making close to zero sense to them at this time, they heard one voice say one thing, and that's what mattered to them. They heard the voice of the Almighty speak and say, "This is my Son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." That's all they needed. They didn't need everything explained. They didn't need all the answers of what's going to happen next. It would have been nice to know the path that the Lord has laid out before them. That's not what they were given. One command, and that's what they trusted in. This voice, listen to him. And that was good enough. And they would then come back down this mountain utterly confused on what just happened, utterly confused on what's about to happen. And they couldn't tell anybody about it, but they would forever hold on to those words, "This is my Son." These three words, listen to him. And even as the next week of events were unveiled and things would get much worse, they would experience betrayal. They would see Jesus experience arrest and abuse, persecution, and the cross. Through it all, they would need to hold on to these words, listen to him. What about you, church? Do you know what it's like to be confused by what God is doing? Anybody? Do you know what it's like to have questions about how this thing or this event is going to turn out? to maybe walk through a season of life full of doubt and questions, maybe fear, maybe you're anxious about something, uncertain and utterly confused. Anybody can relate to that? The encouragement for us today is this. In those moments, can you hold fast to those same words? Jesus is the Son of the Almighty. Listen to him. One of my most critical memories at CIBC is the year that my dad was the dean of the camp that I got to go to as a student. And we played this game that we called the Heaven and Hell game. And it was actually a really fun game. What happened is all the campers start at the top of Boys Hill, right? And the host of the game would start on one of the steps, kind of be elevated, and would give this long monologue. It was a fairly long monologue. It's the most boring part of the game. And as we're junior hires trying to come on, let's go play. They would give us all a stack of fake money, like Monopoly money, right? And a certain amount of money. We'd all have the same exact money. And then the game was, the monologue was explain, you're going to go down to town. And they're going to walk through the town, I don't know, the carnival town, whatever it was. And what we did is, so we eventually left. We all went down Boys Hill. And as you get into camp, there are faculty members and other individuals all over the place with different booths. And you could go up to these different booths and you could play all these different games. And it was a blast. And kind of like a fair or carnival you might kind of picture. And you could win gifts and awards and different prizes and that kind of stuff. And then even on beyond that, you could do things to get as much money as possible. So and there were other individuals coming up to you, trying to make deals with you, trying to barter with you, trying to give you more money. It was a blast. But then the game would end on your time. When you wanted it to end, all you had to do was go to the cafeteria, and that would be the end of it, okay? And so eventually I played all these games, I got to all these things, I'm collecting all this money, I'm winning things left and right. In my youthful pride, I just wanted to show I could win it all, right? And so I did all that, and I get to the end, everyone's kind of wrapping up, I get to the cafeteria, and I'm one of the last ones in. I get to the front door, and they ask me to hand my money in. So I hand my stack of money in, and they look at it, and right away, the person at the door says, you need to go to the right side. I guess maybe, I don't remember what it was. To this side of the cafeteria. And as I step in the cafeteria, there's two sides. One side is bright. The lights are on, and there's, 10 or 15 campers there. And they all get this really massive, this really cool, like a ice cream sundae experience. And there's music, and they're laughing. And then on the other side, there's the other 70 campers all sitting completely silent in the dark. And that's where the guy at the door said, you need to go that way. And what happened is the whole game was a reflection of life on earth. And that there's going to be all these moments, all these different ways that are going to be enticing to you to spend your life, to make decisions based on gathering things, collecting as much as possible, winning stuff. It's going to be very shiny and attractive and try to lure us to get off of what you were supposed to be on, which was the straight and narrow path. So if you would have left Boys Hill and just stayed on the path all the way to the cafeteria, you would have made it to heaven. All right, kind of a crazy game, but a lot of fun, right? And I didn't get the ice cream, which I was super bummed about. Didn't make it to heaven. But afterwards, what was so foundational and critical for me, which was transformative for me, is that my dad came up to me and he goes, Jared, what happened? What happened to you? Why'd you fail? And I said, I had to tell my dad, of course, that I was attracted to these things. I wanted to play these things. I wanted to win these things. But I had to ultimately, he goes, and I had to tell him, Dad, it's because, honestly, I didn't listen to you at the beginning. The start of the game, he gives this big monologue. He literally told us, stay on the path, and you'll win. Don't get off the path. Don't go play the games. Don't fall into the traps. And nobody listened. And so I'm literally, like everyone else, he's just Dean. But I got to tell my father, at the end of it all, I failed because I didn't listen to you, Dad. Changed my life. I'll never forget that moment telling my father, it's because I didn't listen to you. Church, Jesus is inviting you into his way of life. Listen to him. Let me tell you, Jesus' way of life is a better way of life. It is the way to humans flourishing in this world. It is the way to humans thriving in this world. This is our desire for every man, every woman, and every child that is going to experience camp this summer. That's our hope, is that they would experience Jesus' way of life in such a way that would be so transformative and foundational that although they would love to stay there forever, that they would be so excited and eager to return to their own communities, their own places where they live, work, and they play with Jesus as the Son of God who they will be listening to. This is our hope. This is our desire, is that's what the mountaintop experience creates. That's the entire vision statement of the camp. It's creating mountaintop experiences with God and people of all ages since 1946. That's the goal. That's the legacy we're trying to continue on. Now, going up to camp every summer may not literally be going up a mountain, but the goal is the same. It's to experience Jesus in a way that will transform us into a people who will accept his invitation to do life his way. And since they can't stay at camp forever, thankfully, our hope is that they'll come back here from that mountain and to come back to this life with Jesus. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to dive into your word, to reflect together on this incredibly transformative moment in Peter, James, and John's life, to see Jesus not transformed into you because he was always you, but transfigured into your being outwardly. As you started something new and pointed his countenance toward the cross and the grave and beyond. Father, we thank you for that moment. For they wouldn't realize it until after the fact, but that cross event would change not just theirs, but all of the world and everyone throughout history's life for eternity. We get to be a part of that. Father, help us now to leave today and to start tomorrow, first thing, listening to you. We thank you, we love you.